You're live, by the way.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to the software.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight's show with a guest.
Yes, thank you. Ryszard is going to lead the show now. He said he was an introvert, and clearly he's not.
Well,
So
not 100% pure breed, I suppose.
fair enough. Fair enough. So I'm super excited. Second episode, which is exciting all to itself. As usual, I have my cohort with me here, NotJay.
Howdy, folks. Welcome.
And sorry about stepping on you there, boss. And then Ryszard Tokarczuk.
Ryszard Tokarczuk.
Tokarczuk. Okay. I will just stick with Ryszard. I think I got that down.
And that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Hey, and just some little bookkeeping before we get into our conversations here tonight. Norsehound and Niels have connected, and they are working on whatever they're working on. And I don't know which of the games is going to get done. I want it to be a secret. But as soon as that's finished, and I'm not putting any kind of constraints on them, then I'll get the Dietz Foundation involved, and then we'll work on getting the games published. So be patient. I'm not trying to rush anybody with any of this stuff, but I want it to be a nice, good product. Anyway, with that, I really want to thank Ryszard for taking time to be on the show. He actually, I think, went above and beyond. Not only did he put in 2 entries, and I've got links in the description of the video where you can find his 2 games, as well as Tabletop Simulator, as well as YouTube videos on how to play his games. So, Ryszard, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. My excuse for creating additional content is that, as many of us, I feel writing the rules is a difficult task, and I felt the need to make sure that that the way that I want my game to be played, I don't know if I can fit it into the postcard size of sentences. Once again, it's not the problem of the size, but in my experience, what I have found, it is very difficult to actually write a rule book. To express step by step in a clear and concise way how exactly you play the game. So this is why I ended up creating the digital modules that enable on Tabletop Simulator that enabled me also to create YouTube videos. Yes, I didn't have to do this, but I hope that it helps anyone that went and checked out my designs.
Yeah. Well, I watched them and I thought, oh my God, that's just awesome that you went to that extreme. So I thank you for that. So you have an interest in Greek history, apparently, right?
Indeed.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? I find that interesting.
So I guess that the easiest answer is it's because of my education past high school. When I went to college or university, it was ancient Greek and Rome. The words like classical philology may not mean much to American-based speakers, but classics maybe a little more. So when the student of history and literature goes into the details of ancient Greek and Roman civilization, suddenly, if you like board games, you are dissatisfied with the fact that it's always Athens versus Sparta, Peloponnesian War, another game about Hannibal, and you know that antiquity is more than just those few episodes. It's literally several centuries. If we go into the Bronze Age, it's even more whole millennia of stuff and stories that can be told. So I guess that I thought that this is something that I can try to provide to create games about those topics that I like, that I'm passionate about.
Okay.
And for me, it is ancient Greece. It doesn't mean that I don't play Second World War tactical games. I do, but my first and foremost topic, ancient Greece, indeed.
Now, You designed the two games that are in the game jam, and I know that you have a third game you've designed that you, I think, had with you at San Diego Histocon. Is that correct?
Indeed, because I in October last year I participated in Consim Game Jam, the second edition,
Mhm.
where during a single weekend, my goodness, during a single weekend we developed in a team of two a game that right now bears the name At the Court of the Great King. It hasn't been published anywhere. We didn't approach yet any potential publishers, but right now we are in the process of developing this game. It's a card game for 2 to 4 players about freezing for a moment. Well,
Yes.
the topic of the game is the court of the Antioch the Third, called Great. So Hellenistic court, mm, players play for victory points, but they play as courtiers, not
Okay.
not the king. So the game the way that it's designed, it could be about CEO and corporate employees, honestly, because it
Oh,
it,
interesting.
it feels it feels the same way that there is one CEO, but you are an underling that wants to be the mm, most valuable employee of the month, basically. But I want to keep it as ancient as possible. This, however, doesn't mean that the design itself is strictly simulation or anything. It's not. But it plays under an hour, so
There
there
you
is a,
go.
there
So
is a
is that more of a board game then, right?
it's a card game. So
Okay,
so
card game. When I say board game, let me rephrase that. Hobby board gaming, which might include card games, right?
yes,
Much
and
less of a war game.
I am not bold enough to slap the label of the war game on this At the Court. I do not honestly I do not even know if this game about duels of hoplites or the game about city being invaded by hostile forces are those war games, because it's not like this is certainly not a game about particular conflict or
Hmm.
particular battle or campaign or anything. Those situations are more hypothetical rather than anything else. But I don't want to make this into war game definition. So
Well, I will say this. I very specifically in the jam, I wanted to use a very broad definition or accept a very broad definition. And so the fact that your two designs aren't historic conflicts, but are involved in historic background and things that were done in most cases through the military, right? The city defense and practicing one-on-one combat. So for me, those both fit within that guideline. Again, that's a rabbit hole that I'm going to try to stay away from. Let me, before we continue, let me just take a quick look at chat and say hello to the people that showed up. We got Eric coming in pretty early, saying hello to everybody. I'm going to get this wrong.
Vigilant.
Vigilant. Thank you. He's in the house. Devin, the original Grognard with the thumbs up. That's kind of his signature. Charles, we love Charles. Hi, Charles.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, Charlie?
And
Charles.
those are just saying hi to everybody that's in chat. So let me ask you, what motivated you to not only participate in the game jam, but to get two entries?
well well well, I guess that being a designer is really going out, trying to reach out to people with your ideas, because if you are a gamer, if you are a board gamer, at some point you will try to start creating your own scenarios
Mhm.
and maybe even games. And I suppose that this is where I am right now. I see a lot of interesting games being published on a yearly basis, even on a shorter at a shorter pace, but once a year. It's just that no one creates the games that I am interested in. If there are, I wanted to start about this in this conversation about underlining my interest in ancient Greece, but
Mhm.
when it comes to ancient Greece, we see games about Peloponnesian Wars, we see games about uh, Punic Wars, we see Julius Caesar, but there are but there are certain topics that are simply not addressed really.
Mhm.
So I thought that your jam is a venue to step, outside of a drawer and a group of my face-to-face friends and just try to push the ideas and push those stories or those games really out to the people online on a
Mhm.
wider web, I suppose. So this is the reason why jam and why design.
Mhm. And but two, so you just couldn't get enough of it. Is that
Well, so the gem gave us the possibility to submit more than a single design, and
uh
some of those designs, because right now I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I wanted to say that the designs that have been submitted, they have been both solo player and and multiplayer or for two players. And one of my designs is predominantly for two people. This duel, it can be played by yourself, but it's not as fun as trying to guess what other player have,
Right.
what cards do they have and what not. And second is was designed with the idea of being at a solitaire game. And once again, this is just the exercise in a slightly different recipe or slightly different dish that is being made, because you do make a game that is for a one player differently than for a game for two people.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take a stab just at single player thing. uh, Artificial intelligence on a postcard size of the rules is a very artificial thing. I'm afraid.
Yeah. And my entry was also solo. And Devin, the original Grognard, he does a lot of that at Lock and Load. Is take some of their games and create solo playability. So at some point we'll have him on, and I'm sure he can elaborate on the trials and tribulations and go through designing solo games. Um, and that's Save the City. Is that correct? That's your solo game.
Save my city, yes.
Save My City. So one of the things I did a little research on that, and you put a link to an article,
Mhm.
which I put in the show notes, the description on the video. You guys can check that out. You want to maybe take a little time and kind of dive deeper into that design, because I thought that the thing that really got my attention was you kind of play the government of your city, and you have citizens that are armed that help defend the city, but sometimes they work against you and let the bad guys in the wall or will turn on you. So
Yes.
that sounds extremely interesting to me. Um,
So it won't be a surprise for any fan of history that throughout history we have several military treatises extant about tactics, strategy, or how to drill your infantry and cavalry. And from ancient times there are several sources or books, texts surviving that describe how to besiege cities or how to defend the besieged cities. And the text that I was using as a sort of inspiration comes from the time between the, forgive me for nerding out on ancient history, but this is
no,
exactly
nerd
my
out,
my
nerd out.
my spiel. The text that inspired the game comes from the period between the Peloponnesian Wars and those city-states vying for dominance in ancient Greece, and the come of Philip the Great and basically Kingdom of Macedon dominating everything and starting the a completely different era. And from this period of less than 100 years, there is this is a period of constant infighting even within the single city states. or between city states.
Okay.
And suddenly you find yourself a text that advise the readers how to defend their city, but the main takeaway from this text is that the main threat is not your enemy, it's your own citizens that can betray you. So you have to arm them because they form your city guard and military forces, but you have to decide when to guard them. You have to supervise them constantly. And so this is something, another passion of mine, that I also want to further explore. And I think that in our hobby there is a lot of space to further this mm, sort of approach. We know, every one of us, I think, play the games where you play the one side and you control all your units on of your side. You are both president, general, and quartermaster at the same time.
Uh-huh.
But throughout the history, not a single participant in any conflict is a monolithic entity. And games like, for example, Pericles by Mark Herman, they show this ancient conflict where one city state is not represented by one player, it's actually represented by two players. And same with this silly save my city design, because it's not maybe the most perfect or serious design, but it does show that the even defenders were not monolithic entity, and you have to take into account the circumstances that may arise. And judging by the source, distrust in your own citizens was the usual fare in those times.
I find that very interesting. And now, full disclosure, I have yet to play it, but I am definitely going to get that on the table here fairly soon, um, because it's got my brain kind of grinding a few design gears myself, because I think that that concept of you have to arm the citizens, but you don't trust them. It's kind of an interesting. Would that be called a paradox? Maybe.
Part of the joys of the design is really also meeting the feedback for your thoughts, because once again, those games will not save the world, or they not cure the cancer, or do much, but at least I can get the feedback, and this is
Mhm.
something that is always very useful. You don't have to tell that my game is perfect, but if you will be able to tell me where it doesn't work, or or if you will provide me any feedback, I can react. I see that there is a question for me.
Yeah, feel free to
Oh
answer
my
it.
goodness. The question is, what were your biggest challenges to overcome when creating a game for the Postcard Design Jam? I think that the biggest challenge for me was when I was going for this reverse side of the postcard, to how to fit everything that I wanted on the size of the postcard, because it's usually accepted, and I don't remember seeing any other design uh, from the jam that had any sort of rules or explanations on the front side. Usually it's just the map, counters, maybe some charts, but not necessarily, and the rules on the other side. So if you have physical space of a postcard, suddenly you have to find the right font, size, uh, images, and then space is premium. So your rules and explanations, they also need to be concise, clear, and fit, literally and proverbially. So that's the challenge. No matter in what language you are writing, it's it's a challenge. But I want also to reach out to other participants from the jam. I do believe that any constraints that we are facing in our creative work, they they help us, because we learn how to work around them.
Yep.
For
Well,
for some of us,
go ahead, Chris.
for some of us who are, when we get going, whether it's verbally or in writing, it's difficult for us to stop. Having the constraint of having to fit everything onto that size really helps you focus the how you want to express your vision. And I think in the long run, both this game jam and the game jam for 2024 that's coming out in December of this year, and I'll let Hissy dive into that more later, but it's going to help me ultimately with how I'm putting together Ocean Thunder, making the rules more concise, tighter, more focused. So I think I agree. I think it's a good thing. Having those constraints helps immensely.
Well, currently, isn't your rule set in an encyclopedia? Wow, that was a hard joke to say. Not as funny. Jeez, with a joke on it.
Yeah, right. No, well, my World War II naval combat game is currently 16 pages long, and there is quite a few. There's quite a few photos in there and sidebars. So it's going to get longer because I'm going to have to add more charts to it, et cetera, and so forth. So, yeah, Mike Bertich,
Hi, Mike.
in. He says it's the same for large game designs as well. How to make them less.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, there are some board games that I open up and I see a rule book that's 35, 40 pages long, and it's like the first thing I do. Okay, out of that 35 or 40 pages, how many of those pages are scenarios?
Yeah, right. I go through and think, what's the core set of rules? How many pages that I can digest?
If like on a board game, if it's more than like 12, it's like, oh God. Yeah, except for Lock and Load, because they use like a 72 font. Because those old guys can't see.
Adding to focusing on the rules, I think one of the things that's important that a lot of designers, I don't think, either think about, and now I'm sure people do, so don't bite my head off too much, but components. Publishers would like to have games that have not a lot of components. And I've seen designs where somebody will come up with a solution that could be used for 3 or 4 things in their game, and yet they've got 3 or 4 different ways of resolving things. So when you're doing a postcard size game, you really can't have multiple forms of resolution, or
right.
You have to narrow that design down.
And in a way, just to riff off what Mike Bertuccelli has written, I would say that for us enterprising designers, it's easier to design a postcard size game than it is to design a 20-page long rule book kind of a game.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, Mike has designed a few, so I'm sure he's got some good input on that. And at some point, Mike, I'll reach out to you to have you on the show as well. And at some point, we'll open up for people to jump on here if they want to interact with Ryszard directly. So you did the Save the City, and then the other one, and I cannot pronounce it. So if you want to pronounce it, maybe give a little more detail on that, because I think that was your first design, right? Save My City was your second one you entered?
It was second, and the first design has the Greek name. So once again, I don't want to anyone that feels bad about not speaking Greek or ancient Greek, don't pronounce it the way that you want. Don't worry. The way that I pronounce it, it sounds Hoplomachos or Hoplomachos.
Okay.
But there is no. This is a kind of a double entendre situation, because you can pronounce it Hoplomachos or something of the sort. And here because I live in California. Forgive me, dear audience, for betraying this TMI sort of information. Here, especially
the
when
California accent kind of gave you away.
here where machos enter the picture, suddenly, I mean, it's a kind of pun, really.
Okay.
Especially with the way that the title is divided into those two parts. So this game is named after the Greek term for the drill instructor in ancient Greece, because once again, I will assume that everyone knows that ancient Greek hoplites fought with spears, but they also carried swords just as well. So at some point in the 5th century BCE, there is, for the first time, there are mentions in the sources of those drill instructors, and no one knows what exactly they were doing, but it looks like at some point drill became an issue for the ancient Greeks in their armies. And the game is really about exactly this, trying to make a fencing game between the two hypothetical warriors that fight outside of the ranks of heavy infantry. Such situations may have happened when the lines broke, or maybe when the battle is lost and one side is running away, or maybe
Mhm.
your spear shaft has broken and you have to just fend off the enemy with a sword. How do you do this? And this is exactly, what this game is about, trying to research or explore what I know about the sword usage of the sword in ancient Greece.
Mhm.
So people who have examined this design a little closely may have noticed, if you do not, I will tell it out loud right now. It has been inspired by En Garde. I think Rainer Knizia is behind En Garde. It's just that the En Garde is really a fencing game, and the ancient Greeks with shields and it's not a fencing. I wouldn't call this a fencing in the modern usage of the
Right.
word. So really, this design is my attempt. I do not know if it is successful, but I use it as a mm, to create a model to try to understand and express in my own terms what may have happened if Hoplite cannot use a spear anymore. And once again, there are no sources really to go into detail about this, but I feel, speaking as a designer of this, I feel that it was quite rewarding to go through the extant iconography and the
Mhm.
papers and try to come up, how do you do, two hoplites waving swords at each other in game, because creating a game means that you have to express your idea in some clear set of rules, creating a model, really. And to create a model you have to understand the subject
Yeah.
or at
To
least
some degree, right? To simulate it.
have the idea what exactly you want to represent on the board. So once again, this is not historically necessarily correct or appropriate, but posing the question, how did ancient Greeks wield wield their swords? I mean, this is a useful experiment. I mean, because at least by trying to put it into the set of rules, I know just by playing the game what kind of behaviors in game would not fit my image of ancient Greek hoplites.
Okay.
So this is something that I want to leave the audience with. Even if this design is not perfect, it designing a game about your chosen subject can increase your understanding of the subject.
Agreed. 100%. 100%. Yeah. I get that same experience when you start to research a game that you have an idea and you start, you dig into it, and then you learn so much more. And I think that's one of the reasons why many of us play war games or design war games.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, you mentioned earlier your age. I won't share it. You can if you'd like.
It's not a secret.
No, but compared to myself, you're a young pup.
I am probably much younger than anyone here, probably.
The three of us, I know you are. But let me ask you this. So, one, I'd like to know a little more about your background. I mean, obviously, you and I had these conversations in person, but how you ended up in the middle of California. And for people who don't know, Fresno has I think 200 people live in Fresno. No, I'm kidding. It's much larger than that. But yeah, no, I don't want to start any type of civil war here. But I assume you were born in Poland and somehow ended up in Fresno. And I'd love to hear that story.
So it's not the I am Polish citizen indeed, who lived for more than 30 years in my own home country. But at certain point, I met a woman who was a tourist in my hometown, and this is how I've met my future wife. Sounds like a TV title of the TV series, almost.
It's a Hallmark movie.
It's true. At some point in our relationship, there was a decision to be made, because she is American, born and raised in California, and I was and am a Polish person. How do you do this, really, this kind of long distance relationship? So it came to be that I decided at some point to move into California. It was 2016 to be exact, summer, and it just so happens, and my wife didn't know this. She found out a little bit later that Fresno is very close to Hanford. For those of you who do not know, Hanford is a headquarters of GMT. And yes, it's a small world, especially nowadays when the internet allows us to cross the time zones and even the Atlantic and Pacific. It's just a matter of opening your computer and speaking up, really, with or without camera.
Yeah, when I was younger, I spent a month in Hanford over a weekend.
Yeah.
Another poor joke. So
it's a lovely place.
No, it is. There's so many lovely places across our country, and California is abundant in those. But,
replete, if you will.
Okay. So I see Mike is talking about, just to kind of get caught up when talking about the rule books, he says, but it's really not the number of pages, it's the content on the pages, and it's heavy in graphics and examples or text, which, yeah. I think when you've got really good explanations of rules or sample games, or turns at least, that you can sit down, look at the graphics, put your board up, and move the counters around and copy that. I think that's extremely helpful. And then Charles says, you're all young compared to me. Hi, Charles. Yeah. And then Charles is a few years older than I am, but we love Charles regardless. And then Mike says, I have 2 Polish artists working on Wolfpack. Nice. And then Meandering Mike has meandered over. Hi, Mike. So we have Mike and Mike. And Mike.
I hope that I will not end up confused. So many mics.
Yes.
And I'm speaking to one.
Yes. So let me ask you. I'm really curious about Tabletop Simulator. I've seen on Twitter a number of times where David Thompson says that he almost uses that exclusively to design his games. How difficult is that to use? What's been your experience taking what you've done and put it to Tabletop Simulator?
So the part of the one perk of being young is also that you are most likely well versed in using computers. or Windows or Linux or whatever.
Mhm.
And tabletop simulator, I kept saying this even to my friends in private conversations. If you know how to operate Paint in Windows, you can get by in tabletop simulator just as well, because it's really just linking the images that you have, like images, PNG files or any other format, and
Okay.
just uploading them, and then using the options from the menu, rescaling, size up, size down, and stuff like that. If any one of us try to play, well, create the module for for the vassal sort of system, there is a very certain way that you have to put in all the data, and it's doable. But if you have many counters, many cards, it's difficult.
Right.
Really, in tabletop simulator, it's maybe a little more involved than copy paste, but it's as difficult as copy pasting.
Okay. And it
So
doesn't enforce your rules. Is that correct? It's kind of
it,
like the players have to do that.
unless you will start using scripts, which is a higher tier of the modifying the tabletop simulator, using
Okay.
tabletop simulator, there is nothing that enforces the rules at all. So you can literally throw the dice in tabletop simulator using your mouse cursor, because there is nothing in the TTS that will stop the dice from rolling.
Okay.
For the same reason, you have no rigid locations, possible locations for the counters, just like certain vassal modules have, that on point to point maps you can place the counters only in specific places of the board. Nothing of the sort. But
Okay.
for young hopefuls, TTS is easy, because really you can modify the content of the module almost on the fly. If you are running through multiple iterations of the counters or cards, and you just modifying them on a weekly basis or more often than that, it's very easy, it's very quick to do in TTS.
Okay. I'm gonna have to give it a shot. I've not used it, although I have it, and shame on me. My understanding is it is extremely useful.
It's a tool, and there are many tools out there really that we can use. You don't have to use TTS. It's not like, uh, foolproof answer to all the challenges for making a playtest prototype.
Right, but you used it on two of your games, so I would assume that is that one of your default tools that you use, or
It is.
yeah.
It is indeed, because when it's true that many people, or many wargame acquaintances of mine, they are familiar with Vassal, if anything, or
Hmm.
Cyber. Was it Cyberbox or Cyberboard? I think Cyberboard. But I haven't used this Cyber thing for
Yeah,
years
that's
now.
news to me. Okay.
So there is more than one way to play board games or strategy games over the internet. TTS allows me to push the design to the people who do not live in my time zone. So basically, anyone that wants, they do
Right.
not need to print it out. They just access the module and off they go. They can test it. They can provide me with feedback.
Yeah. Now, okay. Now that's got me thinking. Can you put 3D objects in there? Like if you wanted
Yeah.
to do a miniature game?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to dig into that. That'll have to be maybe a whole show on its own. We'll have you come back and maybe teach it.
I never used the 3D options, but for example, if I will say Space Hulk, maybe this will ring a bell to some of the audience. Basically, a
Yeah.
game, board games with miniatures, or even tabletop simulator is used for even role playing, where you have tabletop role playing with miniatures for monsters and player characters,
Okay.
which means that as long as you can provide files in the appropriate format for the 3D miniature, you can really kind of provide your own visuals. You do not have to rely on only this one dragon, this one ogre, or human warrior.
Interesting. I
just
wonder if
create your own.
STL files could be used. I'm just thinking out loud.
I do not know the answer because for years ago I tried to go into Warhammer 40k, and since my high school days, never again. I wasn't rich enough then. I am not rich enough now to afford this. And let's face it, the cardboard gaming, all the counters fit into the box, and you can have many boxes. But when you
Yes.
start traveling with all the miniatures, oh my goodness.
So
No,
let me
no.
ask you: do you currently, or have you beyond 40K played any historical miniature games?
I guess that the easy answer is to say no, not really.
Okay.
There are friends who play Songs of Ice and Fire, I think, the Game of Thrones sort of thing.
Okay.
For years, I was looking into the systems that, for example, naval battles of antiquity. But the best system that I have found is available on Board Game Geek. It's called Wargame, and it hasn't been published by GMT Games. It just shares the name. It's a game where you create out of the matchboxes. You create the matchbox is your galley, and the number of the matches that are on the sides are your oars. The number of the matches that are sticked vertically
Yeah.
are your sails and the speed. So you basically move those matchboxes, literal matchboxes, around the table. It's a fan-made, web-published game, but it was so much fun and nice to play. So in the end, I didn't went after becoming a collector of miniatures, really.
Okay.
And years ago, I have discovered. So there are those miniatures that are kind of cardboard, paper soldiers sort of thing. So you can craft yourself those. I have crafted myself a piece of artillery. If you will forgive me, dear
So I
audience, I
just
will
learned
just
how to show comments. I'm still learning, guys. So bear with me on this. So yeah, Mike says TTS is great for game design and play testing. If you need to say something quickly, it's very easy to do. Obviously, I don't need to read it for you, but there we go.
I read it whenever I do them.
So this is my attempt in the tabletop miniature wargaming, creating antique piece of artillery.
Very
Right
cool.
now it's kind of dusty.
Big dim ballista.
Yeah. But it hasn't been used in any skirmish system or any other. Once again, because I just find it difficult to store all the pieces that I would need to have. And it's another thing that I didn't mention here on the podcast. I'm a person that doesn't like to play games where you have scenarios where you fight, your army is consisting of points. We play 1000 points battle. I want to play Siege of Alesia and not 1000 points thing.
You want to play historic scenarios.
Preferably so. And usually in those miniature systems, it's more about army lists than anything else. It's fine, but it's not what I'm after.
I can help you find those. I can help you find rules that allow you to play the way you want to play. Trust me, because I'm the same way.
I would be interested, because when I was trying to look out, I just didn't find anything that scratched my itch.
Yeah, I think the points games are trying to make everything even, right? So each side has an opportunity to win, and I don't really look at those for the most part as being historical. I mean, if you play a set of, say, ACW rules, a lot of times it's not about points. It's about the units that were actually there. So one side, just like in history, may or may not have an advantage, and you're playing it because you're trying to learn about that particular event, as opposed to two people throwing down and playing miniatures. Yeah, Chris?
So, three things. Meandering Mike has got the first point. Point-based games are designed to sell more and more miniatures. Two, it's designed for pickup games. I bring my army, you bring your army, we show up at the store, and there's no pre-thought needed. I'm putting down 1,000 points or 2,000 points or however many points. You put down the same number of points, and we're going to have a quote-unquote even chance of winning the game based off of the capabilities. Third, it's designed also for tournament play. So I've got my 2,000 points. Ryszard has his 2,000 points. You've got your 2,000 points. And now we are, since all things are quote unquote equal, it's who is the better player.
Or dice roller, in my case.
Right. Exactly. So it's that's what points games are designed for. I'm not a points gamer. I was a points gamer, but only because it got me back into gaming after so long. But as soon as I found a core group of gamers, I said, you know what, guys, we could play much better, more enjoyable games if we did it this way instead of that way. And I've been able to not have to worry about points gaming ever since. So yeah, I can definitely get people pointed in the right direction. It's not my show, so I'm not gonna get on my stump and talk about the one game system that I will always talk about. But
no, feel free, because I like that system.
So for small games where you've got 5, maybe 10 guys per side, pick up a copy of Fistful of Lead.
Reasonably priced.
Right now, you can get the downloads if you go to wiley-games.com. They've got a 25% off all PDFs. So this is $10 in PDF. You can get it for $7.50. It's literally, as you can see on the front, we've got ancients, we got Shakos, we got M1 helmets. It is, there are no points whatsoever. It's all time agnostic, era agnostic. Now they do have. Bear with me. They do have
for that.
What's that?
I put a link to Wiley.
Yeah.
Fistful of
Lead. There you go.
Western game. Anyway, I just grabbed it quickly.
So they do have quite a few supplements. So, for instance, if you are into mecha, like BattleTech,
you
can play Battlesuit Alpha. If you're into Star Wars, or you've got just a crap ton of Warhammer 40K miniatures, got Galactic Heroes. If you want to play more than just 5 or 10 guys to a side, they've got bigger battles. Again, as you can see, it's period agnostic. I got a World War I guy fighting in the Boer Wars. I got an English longbowman. I even got dragons. I mean, so
Ryszard, you see, he's pretty much a shill.
Oh, absolutely, I am.
But
there's other games out there that I can lead you to that aren't point-based also. But
Fistful of Lead is something that I didn't go into, because when I was looking into the miniatures, I was looking for systems that are oriented mainly towards the antiquity. So very period specific systems on various scales and like, but I never went for those agnostic, and the reason why I ended up creating the cardboard piece is basically I can store soldiers that are two-dimensional soldiers
Yeah.
quite easily.
Oh,
And,
and you
and
could even any of the games
precisely.
that I would mention to you, you could use 2D, paper
At,
paper
Standees.
miniatures.
at the same point, even though it's not like I'm returning to Warhammer 40k, but if I would bring to Warhammer 40k game two-dimensional paper cut-out soldiers, I would feel very strange and very not confident going into the meeting with people like this.
Oh, totally understandable, and that's why when I decide I'm going to get into a game, I make both sides. So, like, I've got a game that I'm learning, Con Sonar. It's a Cold War era submarine game, and I've got both American subs and Soviet subs.
Mhm.
So I make both. That way, when I show up to play a game,
Yeah.
I've got both sides. So for to help you with that feeling, you can show up at the game store with your little standees, which there's no problem with. You got your you'll have your Macedons versus say the Scythians, and you got both because see I know that they're not all Greeks or Romans. But yeah, it's there's that way I know with having both, like I'm gonna have both the U.S. Army from 1985 and the
Mhm.
Czechoslovakian Army from 1985.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have both. That way, when I show up, I know that I'm not going to run into a problem with not being able to find an opponent. All I got to do is find another player who's willing to play me and play with my toys.
So
Right.
one question about this fistful of lead, because I have the opportunity. The scale of the miniatures doesn't matter,
Nope,
or is it okay?
doesn't matter. I mean,
Forgive me, dear
literally.
audience. I was just
No,
curious. I had to ask.
no, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
So I can talk ad infinitum about Fistful of Lead, but to break it down very succinctly,
He has a
I
whole
can
channel on it.
I can literally play with any miniature that I own in my house with those rules.
Mhm.
With enough imagination, all I need, and Jay Wiley, the who designed the rules, Jay Wiley will tell you this book right here is all you need
Yeah.
to play skirmish level games. Um, it's if you want to make centurions,
I can.
you can make centurions because it's all based on the traits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that could be interesting, right? You can have a bunch of centurions wander into a town to have some ale and get into a street fight.
yeah, exactly. Or you've got your you got a scouting party, right? They're foraging maybe.
Well, let me follow up with that on a little more of a serious question. Since we have somebody who's a bit of an expert on Greek combat and military and history, were there ever any small scale engagements that could be played on a skirmish level and represented with a dozen miniatures, or was it more large scale combat?
I guess that it's not like there are particular or many mentions of small scale actions, but when we go through the description of campaigns, sometimes those forces involved in campaigns, they amounted to, let's say, 2,000 soldiers and not more. So established game established systems like Great Battles of History that operate on scale 1 double hex counter 1,500 soldiers in this counter basically cannot be used for some of those small scale engagements.
Well,
Then there are mentions that group of mercenaries, 200 people, 200 cavalrymen, ravaged the countryside. So how did they ravage the countryside? We could play a scenario how they went about it, right?
right.
Uh, so it the actions of a squad sized units maybe not didn't made it to the bits, but yes, sneaking into the cities, the this is exactly how Epaminondas kicked out the Spartans from Thebes, because he basically made across the wall with a ladder, if I remember correctly, and not a single dog has barked. So
Well,
How
so
that happens, who knows? Because
so if you
my
take
dog sees a leaf blow across the yard and it's barking.
those were Theban dogs. They weren't barking at Thebans.
their dogs are well trained.
Apparently,
So that kind of leads me to, I'm pondering this, but say if my city could potentially be the seed of a miniature game, using the rules that you have to oversee where your forces are deployed and who turns against you, and then resolving the combat through small scale skirmishing.
And
yeah.
this is, yeah, in short, yes. In long, I would say that it would call for leaving the postcard format and entering the slightly bigger scale of the product. But generally, the game like Save My City, it was meant, for example, to illustrate the actions that citizens or civilian defense can make by, for example, flooding the plain with water. So suddenly the stacking limits in this area are limited. It doesn't involve any, particular unit, military unit to be used. We just need certain civilians with some tools to break the dam and flood the field, or expand the banks of the river or stream, things like
Right.
that. So it it could be a possibility by all means, because once again, we have games about sieges, but what about games about preparing your city, your fortified defense position for defense before the enemy comes?
Yeah. Now that you got me thinking about this, I'm going to jot down a note because that may be a game design I might work on. Is to
Mm,
take your core mechanics for Save My City and see if I can use that and build on it into a miniature game. And obviously, it won't fit on a postcard size, even with 6 mil miniatures. I would not try to do that. But I think that does bring up an interesting design idea. So, so let me ask you this: when you're designing your games, whether
mhm.
they're the postcard games or any of your war games, especially on the historic side, how do you balance, or do you even try to balance historical accuracy to gameplay?
In short, I don't, and I'm afraid that I am kind of bad at this, honestly, because once again, if we take a look at those designs that have been submitted to the jam,
Hmm.
the accuracy, as in those games, they do not depict any authentic episode from the known history, really. So it's more about my understanding of the subject and the way how I represent it on the table,
Right.
in the game. I for many years, and I think that I am still guilty of this, it's very easy for me to try to put this into kind of format of Chrome rules that add more detail but are not really playable. And there are some designs of mine that we haven't talked about tonight, and it's not like we have to, but
Oh, I would
the,
like to. We'll
the
dig into
way
it in a minute.
the way that this particular design works right now, it's completely clunky, unplayable game that requires multiple hours. So it's just kind of, it's clunky. It maybe gives me the right feel, but compared to what is available on the market nowadays, games that you can finish in 2 hours or less, it's just anything but. It's not even World in Flames. It's much worse.
So what I'm hearing is that you're looking more to represent a flavor of that topic as opposed to being historically accurate. So far, at least in some of the designs that you've done, specifically for the postcard game, I know with mine,
Yeah.
it was more about the flavor. There's nothing, I made zero attempt to be historically accurate.
So I also thought that it would be because many people, I think that they know something of ancient Greece, but I thought that one's additional selling point would be to touch upon the bits that people do not necessarily know about. Did hoplites fight with swords? Hmm. Did they duel? Hmm. I mean, so instead of making a game about the battle of two hoplite units against each other, for example, or making some historical, even historical duel, there are some examples of that, just or even mythological. Go for something kind of nondescript and try to put in as much flavor or the details. To give you the example, the sword that is called copies. Forgive me for nerding out once again. It has
No,
a
nerd away.
different icon than Makeover, and it functions slightly differently in the Hoplomachos design. So it's just that in the game itself, you are never really game players are never really exposed to the names like copies or Makeover. You don't need to know this, but
Mhm.
if you choose the one sword over the other, they function slightly differently, or at least they give you a different ability, I
Okay.
suppose. And once again, this is not necessarily an academic article. What is the functionality of this sort of blade versus another? It's my interpretation how they what how they could be used, or maybe what was the functionality, what was different between those swords, and why they were used. So it's more of a kind of interpretation
Yep.
of my own, but I'm not trying to force the players to start speaking Greek. Maybe in the larger designs.
Bye, Warmat. Thanks for stopping by, boss. So, a couple of things.
Hmm.
You talk about your interest in history, and you talked about your interest in games. When did you design your first game? How old were you? Is this something that you've done started recently, or is this something you did as a child?
If we are talking about the board games, there
Any
is
games?
there is very old story. So you may I do not know how it looked like in United States, but there must have been a magazines for young people in United States, and maybe they have been published with board games of some sort, even very simple ones.
There
As
are
a
board game magazines that I was exposed to when I was 14.
so the thing that I'm talking about is basically the game for the young people, for the youth, for the teenagers, and as a kind of fold out, fold in, the spread in the middle is
Okay.
basically the map of a board game. And I do mean it's a those were simple board games, not really war games at all, but pieces that you had to cut out
Okay.
and and basically follow the rules, and you have you can play a board game. once
So an
upon a
early
time,
version of a postcard game, kind of.
only bigger. Only bigger. Once upon a time, when I was sick and I had to stay at home, I just entertained myself making up board games, with a pencil and a piece of paper. Those were never tested and they have never been played. They are forgotten to the time and people. But it was something that happened to me in the teenage times. Now, if we are talking about the specifically more serious designing,
Mhm.
really, I am one of those people who started playing board games or war games because it's also. Can I say the title Settlers of Catan on this
Yeah.
channel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So when you start playing games like Settlers of Catan and you enter the hobby, when you start playing GMT games, at some point you see that in those war games you can create your own scenarios. So 15 years ago, or maybe give or take 5 years, it was very easy to create your own battles with Greeks, for example, that haven't been in Great Battles of Alexander box for some reason, even in the expansions. Uh, and then when you start doing this, you realize that you can do more. You can not only create additional scenario, additional fan-made content for the games that you are familiar with. You can actually create your own, and it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be very serious, but nothing stops you from doing exactly this. So I guess that you ask me when did it start? I would say
Yeah.
that maybe 4 years ago, because really when you are passionate about certain period of history, you have to notice on the market that your period of history doesn't have enough games. Whatever
Yep.
your favorite period is, you will notice this. And then if you are really passionate about, I don't know,
I
late
know there's
Roman
not enough
Empire.
bulge games. There's just not enough bulge games out there.
Yes, you can make your own, right, with your
Sure.
own unique twist, if you like.
Yeah.
Just like this design about being the is the right word, right phrase, paramedic, the corpsman.
Yeah.
They won with gauze, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the familiar battle, but made from completely different perspective, really.
Well, I
And
think that's some of the beauty of the game jam is just some of the different takes on topics that haven't been covered, like
yeah,
oh, and I forgot this. He's got a really long name, but it's the one where you play the medic, right?
mhm.
Your games, with defending your city with people you don't trust, to put it lightly, or you have to manage, right? I think is very interesting to see those types of games come out.
And it makes one hopeful, even if the large name companies do not necessarily rush and stumble over each other to publish our designs.
Yeah.
And it's all right, because those designs are not necessarily marketable or appropriate for the as a commercial product, I would
Well,
say.
I was introduced to the postcard format as kind of a Chotsky that was thrown into a bigger game, right? And then with Against the Odds magazine, when you subscribe, you get to pick one of their postcard games, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of a hey, here's a little thank you. And one of the things that I'm actually hoping will happen, and it's already done it to some degree, and with us just with the Dietz Foundation, is that these games do get published, and that maybe there are publishers out there that say, hey, this idea of throwing in some postcard games as an add-on, and I know it costs money, and they're trying to save money and all that, but um, I'm hoping that through the jam that these publishers see these things and that some of these games may find a home
Mhm.
as a Chotsky to a larger game. And
And
so,
even be expanded later through development into something bigger, maybe.
well, the Narrows and I think that was the doctor who submitted that, and he submitted 3 games. And I may have this wrong, so cut me a little slack. But that game was actually picked up by Snafu, and it's being made into a larger game. So it will be published. And he was kind enough to leave his postcard version in the game jam. We talked about it, and I said, you don't need to take it down. It's your game. You can do with it what you want. I'd love for it to stay in here so people have access at least to the kind of the seed of the larger game. And so, yeah, in that sense, it's very much a success. I know that David Thompson, with his, I think he called it Battle Card, has made a second Battle Card game. And at some point that will show up in the wild somewhere. So, yeah, I'm pleased with the outcome so far this year of the Jam, and having people like yourself submit games. And so you were saying earlier, so you have yet to be published as far as by a legitimate publisher?
Yes. I am just the person who designs the games, but hasn't been printed.
Well,
officially.
You will officially through this. You'll have 2 games published. So,
Indeed.
Here we go.
I wanted to say one more thing before I will pass the voice to NotJay. One thing about the postcards specifically, because you mentioned the against the odds, I still have friends, gaming friends, who whenever there is a game, multiplayer game or scenario-based game, they want to play the biggest scenarios, or main campaign sort of thing. So same. My experience with Against the Odds, they published very interesting titles throughout the years, but most of my friends always kind of ignored those, postcard games. And I want to posit the idea, we do not have to discuss it, but I feel like it's not what is a war game, but I feel like in last years it has been changing, but more than 10 years ago, maybe postcard-sized games were not treated seriously. Just like, there is a discussion if animated movies are form of art or comic books are art. Are postcard games, right?
Well, let's not start that, but okay, I get your point.
But I feel like just like in those discussions about the movies and animated full feature movies, it's kind of beside the point. Same with the postcards. They are games in their own right. They may be smaller, they may require less of your time and table space. They are still games, and they can be war games, however we define the war games just as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, I see that Hex to Hex asks me about my preferred era for wargaming. Forgive me for this ugly joke. Any game where I can kick the shins of romance is a game that I like to play. So it doesn't have to be Republic of Rome or, it doesn't have to be Republican romance. It can be later, but basically antiquity, and preferably Greeks. Games about Greeks are something that I always find interesting, mostly because they, even modern Greece, it doesn't make it towards the popular awareness of pop culture, of Western pop culture, and it's fascinating.
Very much so. Well, Hex to Hex is kind of the resident in our core of people, internet in general, American Civil War. He lives in the heart of it. He eats it, breathes it, sleeps it. So
he may be even testing something for Great Battles of American Civil War. Who knows?
He does. He's got inside track to some of that stuff, and he can talk about that. So let me ask you: you've had a chance to we've been chatting, and I told you it wouldn't be a problem because there's so much to talk about. Is there anything maybe? Actually, I did have another question before I kind of open it up a little bit. You're close to GMT. Have you gone to their weekend? They have two a year.
Since 2016, I try to be there all the time. So all those Octobers and Aprils, I used to have been to be. I used to go there.
Okay.
Maybe during the COVID times, maybe there was one time when I simply didn't made it, but I was there. It's a nice place. It's really nice, and I've made friends there. For a person who is not a foreigner, to be able to reach out to people in their hobby, and wargaming is a hobby, to find and make those friends, it does make the GMT weekends, GMT West, kind of special to you
Nice.
because of that. So
Well, I will get to see your face again at the next one because I plan on going.
I'm sorry, I forgive me, the audience, we didn't talk about my personal life, but I will not be participating in the October.
Oh,
I'm
well, how
sorry.
about
I
Histocon? Are you going to go this year?
It happens in November, right?
Yeah, they just posted. I just saw that Harold had put a tweet out, and it's, I think, the beginning of November.
So forgive me for saying this, because once again, maybe the audience doesn't want to hear about this, but this is the official reason why I'm participating in the October. My firstborn is scheduled for the first half of October. I don't think that I will be going, places.
No, you won't.
Outstanding, my friend.
Congratulations, my friend. Congratulations.
Thank you. I will need it. I will need it.
That's a good reason.
Talking
Very
about
few.
being kicked in the shins, that's your future.
Yeah.
I will play the Roman. That's fine. If they will start, favoring the Greeks, everyone likes Romans. It's just why Greeks are far more interesting because they are so less known, I would say.
Well, now you have become our resident Greek expert, so we'll tap into you when we've got questions.
Hopefully, I will be able to provide.
Oh, I'm sure you can. Carpet Commando.
Oh my goodness, no, no, please. It's something that I'm thinking a lot in recent days and weeks and months. Yes, and
Well,
we will see.
congratulations on that. Well, I'm going to be a little bummed that I won't see you in October, but for a very good reason. So that's good, and maybe you'll have a chance to sleep and possibly get to San Diego for Histocon.
Maybe, but this is also the reason why I'm so active with tabletop simulator and digital, version of the games, because it doesn't. Digital versions of the games really do not require your physical presence
Right.
at the table. So I can push those. I can continue working on the creative work even in changing circumstances of private life.
Nice.
Hopefully.
So let me ask you, what do you got on the design table? What are you working on now? And kind of a follow on to that is, what is your what do you want to call it? Your great white whale. What is your Moby Dick out there? Your holy grail of design?
So the game that I am working on right now is the game that has been submitted through the Consim Game Jam edition number 2 at the court. At the court of the Great King is the name of it right now.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for all the good, kind words and wishes, ladies and gentlemen. It's the card game for 2 to 4 people. It's the courtiers of Antioch the Third, called the Great, the Seleucid king that fought against Rome in the Battle of Magnesia 190 BC. It's the same king that had Hannibal on his side in one of the naval battles, and it was the naval battle which Hannibal lost for Seleucids. So there is a card game where players try to control the courtiers and gain glory through those courtiers, and it's supposed to be played in 30-40 minutes.
Okay.
This is a co-design game. So right now you see the face of a half of a team. There is another man that is not Californian, Tyrell Lore, and he's the co-designer. We are in online contact. We try to create the as best experience as it is possible.
Mhm.
Possibly in a month or so, hopefully we will be able, or at least this is my personal wish, to start contacting various companies if they would be interested in picking this up. It's the game that fits into the sandwich bag because it's cards, 70 cards, and less than letter size paper sheet for markers, and you do not need all the space on the letter size. And this is the game.
Nice.
It really plays in 40 minutes or less if you do not have to listen to the explanation how to play the game. So I think that we have something on our hands
Oh, nice.
with this.
That's such a good feeling, right? When you just know one of your designs works. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the one that on Discord that you put up looking for
Yeah.
playtesters?
Yeah,
Okay.
precisely so. Because one of the things of those young and upcoming designing minds is that we do not have feedback on our designs.
Oh,
It's easy to create the game by yourself. It's not that easy to hear out from the others, not even on a regular basis. How do they feel about your game? And I realized in the last few months that designing a game is really a business kind of project. I'm getting a degree in marketing nowadays, it looks like, just because I want to make the game as attractive to the potential customers. And
mhm.
suddenly it's not designing game at all. It's product, it's customers, it's all those market kind of related things.
Right?
And it has been a voyage of discovery. Yes.
Nice. And that came out of the um, no, what's it called? The
Consim Game Jam,
Consim
organized
Game Jam.
by Fred Serval. Last October there was the second edition of this. I do not know because the third edition hasn't been officially declared yet.
Right.
If they will be organizing this in the last part of the year, I am not going to participate in this either. No. So we hope to wrap it up before the end of the summer
Yeah.
with this card game. And it is available right now on Tabletop Simulator. It is available through each. It has its own
I'll make
website.
sure I have the links in the description to the show.
Thank you.
I know I put a number of your links up. I'll go back and double
Mhm.
check that the links are there for that as well. And then again, if you're watching this live or later on, he's definitely looking for some play testers. If you're, check the. In fact, I'll put a link into Discord also. If you're not a member of the Discord, jump on Discord. You can get into the conversations that we're having there, but also get a copy to play test his game as well. And yeah, card games are fun. Now, I think I told you I'm interested in doing a play test,
Mhm.
and I'm going to get my buddy that I told you that we sit on the side of the hill and drink beers as we stare at Tijuana on the other side of the border there. But him and I will video a play test session so you can see our raw reactions and thoughts.
Oh no, and those screams and grins and
And what the heck?
puzzled looks on your faces.
Well,
But
that's the best way, right? Because you won't be there to tell us anything. We'll
yeah,
play it blindly. You'll get a really good sense, and I'll do my best to get some good video of it. And he is my co-designer, and at some point it will be on this channel. So when you were talking about Catan, I do want to open up the discussion to games in general, not just war games, although we're going to
fair
focus
enough.
on it. But a little bit of shameless plug here. Why don't you share your impressions of Mythic, the Bigfoot game I designed? Because he's got the chance to play test that a little bit. If you happen to remember any of that game.
So I will start egoistically talking about myself, and then I will switch to your design. One of the
Fair enough.
things that I realized when I was designing the games, even for the postcard jam, but not only, even earlier, is that for some reason I enjoy very much thinking about designing the components, thinking about the functionality of the counters, what is on the flip side, and how those components are going to be used, symbols, and just making this on the digital software. And I did mention this because one thing that I liked about your game was the clarity of the symbols used. It was really very easy to tell once you knew the rules what those symbols are telling you and how they function. The positioning, size, and the symbols themselves, they I don't think that you have used stock vector graphics. It was probably your own design of the symbols, really,
Stock
because
vector graphics is exactly what we use.
yeah. So but my point really is it works. It works even if it is and maybe anyone will correct me, but I believe that if we as designers design the game, design the prototype, the visuals,
Mhm.
if the game will end up being published, the visuals may not be we are not necessarily the ones that will make final decisions about the visuals, or the company that will decide to publish, they may make different decisions to use different graphics, different symbols, different arrangement. uh,
Yeah, your point is valid, but I do know just in general, the more work that we do on our designs, and even to card layout. In fact, the layout that you played, and thank you for those comments, I appreciate it. And I wanted to get a little feedback as well. It's been a while, but I actually realized that there's improvements I can make on that layout. But I think, and again, I'm not a publisher. At some point, I might try that.
mm,
Just why not? Um, but if you've come up with a really effective layout, they're more likely to keep it if it
yeah,
works than redesign it,
or
right?
invent from the scratch something.
Yeah, because
Yes.
the more work or the least amount of work that they need to do to correct your
Mhm.
design. And again, we've got, Mike could pop in and talk about this. Oh, here we go.
Good to know.
See, perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So yeah, to your point is I do the same thing. Is it's not just the game, but also the components and trying to minimize them and maximize what I have in my designs to, you hear this all the time, right? The most complex work will produce what appears to be a simple game.
Mhm.
So,
Because the question was still about your design, I will say that the game that I played, it was November in San Diego, right? If I remember, this was the time. So the game may have changed since then a little bit, but I must say that one thing that really got my imagination going are the names of locations and the people, because dear audience, you may have not seen this game,
not
but
yet.
but I believe that it uses the portraits of characters, and there are, I think, even names of those. They are individualized characters, and
Yep.
as I am former role-playing game person, for me, when I see the portrait of the even fictional character with a name, I start thinking about stories behind that name, and and this is not what the game is about, really, but what you provided with the components, even in this edition in San Diego, just made my imagination going. And
Yep.
once again, I mean, this is so I don't know if this is the reaction of every potential player that you could have, but for a person like me, what you have provided worked. It was fun, it was interesting, and if I would be, writing the after action report using the names or the portraits, they
Hmm.
just help to come up with a story. that join all those player decisions, which card to play, when, and it's possible to write the few paragraphs on this, what exactly was happening and why he didn't come back from his expedition.
Well, thank you for that, because that was part of our design goal. Was it's not a narrative game, but
Yeah.
all games can be narrative if you give the players just a little bit of material to feed the brain, because then that just, like to your point, you start thinking and associating those characters to doing certain things, right? And you can become attached to them to some degree. So yeah, that was by design, and so I'm glad that it worked. And again, thank you so much for talking about it, because you're going to probably be one of the very few people, at least today, that have actually played the game that would be on the show. So I appreciate you taking time to
Not a
talk about my
problem.
game, even though this episode's about you.
Oh
Thank
well, we talk to each other, so that's fine. It's a conversation, not a
Well, and
lecture.
I have promised you a copy. So at some point, I'm going to get the next iteration. And I think, like you, I'm about ready to go out and try to release this puppy on the world. Probably a little bit more playtesting, and then I'll put it on the channel. I'm kind of holding back on it because I want that first impression to be really good. So.
Well, for one, I can tell you that my family, my American family, they are not war gamers. They hear about the GMT West in the warehouse, and they just think, why grown up people do this to themselves?
Right.
But playing a family kind of card game or board game is not something that they avoid. So, for example, if I would like to play Great Battles of History with my father-in-law, maybe he would survive the experience. But with a game like yours, even my mother-in-law can stay by the table and enjoy the time.
Exactly. Nice. Nice. I just heard my computer beep at me. I don't know what that was.
Maybe Discord or something.
Okay. So we're an hour and a half in. If anybody in chat wants to hop on, I can send you a link and you can be on live and chit chat with Ryszard. Any other questions? Thank you, Hex. I just saw that and I appreciate the comment very much. But at this point, and I know you stayed a little longer than you said you might have time, so I truly appreciate it. And definitely want to check in with you from time to time, especially because we're so close. Hopefully I can see you in San Diego. But I'm going to open it up now to who's left in chat, if anybody wants to hop on or just ask a few other questions before I close this session. So I'll give you a few minutes.
We'll see. And I will stay online just as well, because maybe there are some questions that I can try to tackle just as well.
Now, is there anything that maybe I hadn't asked you that you'd like to talk about?
So forgive me for this, but I will get back to one of your previous questions. You
Sure.
you asked about the Moby Dick kind of a project.
Yes, yes.
The Moby Dick of my project is a game about city states, ancient Greek city states, of course, on Sicily in ancient times. Now, if you are familiar with the games that are made for the computer, the video games from Paradox Software, like Europa Universalis, like Heart of Iron, or those are the games where you can play as one side or the other, or this country or this place, and basically every political entity you can play as. Now imagine Sicily divided into 10 or 12 city states, and you do not play as Syracuse, you do not play as Palermo, you can play as, and the game is supposed to basically show the interactions between simulate the interactions between the city states. So
You've already piqued my interest, so I'm going to stay on you to make that sucker happen on a
well,
postcard.
we shall see. Mark Simonich was kind enough to go through the rule book before COVID restrictions,
Oh, nice.
and he was interested in some elements of the design, but the problem was, you may remember I mentioned this clunky, unplayable world in flames kind of design. This is
Mhm.
exactly this ancient Sicily thing. So
Okay.
since then, mostly because of my experience in Consim Game Jam, I had the ideas how to improve, what to change, or what to get rid of, and I have the idea how to make it less clunky. But there were other things happening in the meantime, and 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 yes, it's in the on the back burner, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Well, because you have something on the front burner.
Yes, that too. That too.
Nice. Well, apparently, no more questions for you at this time, which is fine. And like I mentioned, do we want to call it the green room? I mean, that's what all the pros do, right? Before the show, we were chatting. You're always welcome if you catch an episode live and you're in chat and you want to hop on. You're always welcome to do. And I know you said you're a little less likely to do that, but I'm going to open invitation. Um, there you
And
go.
thank you for the offer, Mike, because this is so. Once again, as a young designer, any sort of feedback, any help helps. In fact,
Yeah.
because if we are doing a creative work by ourselves, at some point, I mean, you have to go reach out to people, even if it's unfinished. It just has to be like that.
Yeah.
So I will probably take you up on this. I want also to say that I will be maybe not the regular guest, but one of the biggest benefits for me to be in the jam, and I do mean postcards from the front, really is to pick the brains, to expose myself to different ideas and approaches to the designs. And if I would like to I would like, I think, Mike, that I will send you, because you're asking about the part of town. I will not say this out loud, but I will just send you a private message later on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but are you in Fresno?
We both are. We
Okay.
both are.
Yeah. Okay. So
So,
I'll leave that up to you guys. I don't know, Mike, if you're on the Discord, but I will put a link to the Discord in the description of this video. So anybody that isn't, feel free to join. We talk about game design, and obviously I talk about some stuff on my channel, and you can ignore that and go straight to the game design stuff, or do what you want to do. But I know Ryszard is on there and can easily be reached there.
yeah.
Chris, is there anything that you wanted to add, my friend?
No, it was good show tonight.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about was it Rolling Thunder?
Ocean Thunder, yeah. Well, I mean, we can. Just that I did put it up on Discord for people that are interested
Mhm.
in playtesting. What how I'm going to do it is, if you're interested, I'll send you a PDF copy of the rules first, let you look it over. If you are interested, then I will send uh, the ship tracking sheets
Excuse me.
for a handful of ships and some cutouts in PDF that you don't have to have World War II uh, naval ships to play the game. You can just use the little cutouts. That'll suffice. So yeah, if you're interested, let me know.
All right.
It's right now. It is strictly surface combat. I've already decided that submarines will not be in the game for for both practical reasoning in getting them to work in the rules, but also historically and tactically, they just weren't in the mix during combat between surface vessels. And then I'm still up in the air as to how I want to, if I want to, and how I want to present aircraft in the game. So any and all comments are welcome. Go ahead.
Is it concentrated on one specific theater like Pacific or Atlantic or Mediterranean?
No, you can. I have played Pacific. I've played Mediterranean. I've played North Atlantic. I've played South Atlantic. It is designed to be a toolbox, as it were. I give you the stats on the ships, and if you want to have the U.S. Missouri go up and fight against Bismarck, you can. If you want Bismarck to go scampering after IJ in Congo, you can.
Is it true that Texas is unsinkable in your rules?
Oh no, she's very sinkable, and she has sunk many times on me.
Ryszard, he's a huge fan of USS Texas. That's why.
Yes, I am.
I rib him a little bit.
Oh, there is no problem about that.
Nice.
I know. In my opinion, most beautiful ship in the United States fleet during World War I and II. But I'm a bit biased.
Some of my acquaintances are really into Japanese fleet. So this is why I asked about the theater specificity, I suppose.
Yeah. Now, I do have already to go. If someone wants to do like the first Battle of Savo Island, I already have those ship sheets created. All I got to do is throw those out, and you're good to go. So, yes, horns and cowboy hats.
Well, don't you have a? Yeah, you have a dinosaur hat too.
Well, yeah, of course.
Now's when the show breaks down.
But that's because McMurray puts on really excellent games at conventions and makes people wear the hats, because you can't take gaming seriously.
Oh, I didn't know you played World of Warships, Mike. I actually started doing that in beta, so I've got some of the beta ships. I may have to jump on there at some point and start playing a little World of Warships. It's been a while.
I think that Texas is a high tier bit, so you may be able to encounter both.
No, there's a good. You know what? I keep trying to end the stream, but now I got another question for you. Do you play many video games or war games on video? Because there's quite a few, and some of them are true hex encounter that are, full on video games, and others are, first person shooters and such. Do you dive into any of that?
So yes, I am a video gamer just as well, and years ago I was very happy person because Rome Total War has been published, the first one, and nice. even to play the medieval Total War first one once again, it was quite a experience. I believe that one of the reasons why I started going after GMT games was because Steel Panthers, maybe this name will ring a bell, a computer game that is sort of video game adaptation of Squad Leader, I think, or at least takes some bits from the ASL.
Right.
And I was thinking, if I can play those Steel Panthers game, on the computer, maybe they have a game about ancient battles, right? So this is how I found out GMT games. And nowadays the video games, the problem is with the artificial intelligence. Forgive me, video game designers, my fellow face-to-face players in Fresno have better intelligence than the computer opponents. Really. After initial learning of the game, you can run circles usually around the computer opponents.
Nice.
So I ended up, swerving from Total War to games from the Paradox software. That are games like Crusader Kings. They are mostly story generators rather than strategy or some challenge. And it's fine, but computer is not the obstacle, really.
Yeah.
And this
So
is
Hex is also really big on World War II Russian Eastern Front. So put that in perspective with this comment there.
Gary Grigsby and others. I yes. I remember. Was it the who was responsible for the video game series? Was it I don't, HPS? I think, but there was the designer that passed away a few years ago.
Oh,
Tilly.
yeah,
I don't remember the
something
name.
like
Embarrassing. But the reason why there is this series about the Napoleonic battles from this company, and I remember I was very disappointed where Wellington left the leader counter in this video game left tillers. Yes. Left Wellington before Waterloo, probably around Quatre Bras or something, left the safety of the British soldiers, and French cavalry captured Wellington. I mean, I don't think that my human fellow players would allow for such change of history in computer game. Playing against computer, I can do I can do wonders just because computer doesn't make always the best decisions.
well, isn't that though to some degree kind of the beauty of it? That it is a different type of opponent that maybe you can do those types of things to?
But the problem is that I have no joy in
Oh,
capturing Wellington, apart from the fact that, yes, I have captured Wellington and he will not be around Waterloo anytime soon. But I have much more joy in overcoming the human opponents rather than computer ones.
okay. So are,
So
so are you a big solo player then? I mean, you did your one game as solo, but it sounds like you much rather kick somebody's shins than play
y-
solo.
yeah, because what so if we one thing that I have found out in my board gaming experience, I like hex and counter games. I really like them, but I don't like playing them solo unless they are cheat pool activation mechanic like Revolution games have about uh, the American Civil War,
Mhm.
or basically other AM oriented hex encounter. I can play them, but any other games, playing them solo hex encounter, it's not fun. Deciding whether to do the opportunity fire, I mean, it's so much better. It just tastes differently, completely differently when you have the other human being in front of you, and they are making the decision whether they are going to risk it or not. If I'm playing by myself without those things like I cannot surprise myself. I just cannot surprise myself. With blind swords, I can. With great battles of American Civil, I can. It's just that great battles of American Civil War, too many hours. it's it's very enjoyable, but you will not finish even a small battle in 6 hours usually.
Oh well, Hexy will set up his table for weeks. Some of these games, so
Oh, I know, and I'm playing first day of Battle of Shiloh into the woods. Right now, it's more than a year, once a week, 3 hours, and we are around noon time of the first day. I'm sorry, but this is the truth. So Death Valley was far more accessible. Into the Woods, I would never recommend this for the newcomers to the Great Battles of American Civil War. It's a fun game. It's a fine study of the Battle of Shiloh, but it's not for the faint-hearted.
Well, there's many of us in this hobby that are not of the faint heart. So, right?
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Alrighty, guys. I think I'm going to go ahead and close up shop for this week. Ryszard, thank you so much for coming on and sharing and literally carrying the show tonight. For somebody who's an introvert, it did not come across that way, my friend.
Well, now I will just go away and hide in a closet and just recuperate.
You know
recharge.
what? Do that while you can, because you're going to have a little one that will be in those closets soon enough.
Yes, you are right.
And do me a favor, stay on after we go off and we can say our thanks and stuff like that. And everybody in chat, as always, I appreciate you taking time to check out what we do here. Like I said, I'll fix those links. Thank you, Meandering Mike. I didn't test them, apparently. I'll get those fixed, and I'll see you guys all next week. Bye for now.
Until then.